high, so you can't afford to get everything aligned properly. You have to do it in a few seconds. And even in that time, the workers who were doing the pump change received about 20 millisieverts, which is almost half a year's dose.
What was the first indication that there was a leak on the plant when it first happened? What did you first notice?
Well, we noticed that there was liquor on a routine building check. There was liquor actually on the floor, adjacent to the area here. And what was happening was that it was coming out of the suction side of the pump and spraying into this area. So we saw it there. If we do get an excursion, we have always got an inerting system now. We proved about 2 months ago that we can inert that part of the system.
So you've got an inerting system which can be switched on immediately and a backup system which would take some time to install, right. But all is not lost, right?
Yeah.
Fine. Fine. I remember this being commissioned.
Good morning, George. Hello. George Bragg is one of the foremen in the building. Mr. Johnson.
Have you attended any of the foremen's meetings? You see all the money being spent. Therefore, everybody thinks, good, that's going to carry on for years and years and years. And the company has obviously got plenty of money. There's no problem, there's no threat to our security. The second thing is you see all the fuel in the ponds. It has to be reprocessed. Well, life's never as simple as that, and we've seen it on the other factories. Things can change very, very quickly. And there are circumstances which could arise where there could be a threat to all of this program and a threat to the continuation of reprocessing, and that threat is very real. I'm not saying it's almost certainly going to happen or it's likely to happen. I'm just saying the threat is there. And when I came on the site, I just got the impression that the culture was as though the outside world hadn't changed. It was as it was 10 years ago. Well, in the last 2 or 3 years, there's been major changes to people's attitudes to reprocessing, waste management, waste disposal, which really does hit this factory very hard. Reprocessing is not necessary. In fact, 1 or 2 of our important customers would love to cancel their contracts. A drop of a hat, they'd cancel their contract. We won't let them do that, of course. But there could be circumstances where we might just have to. And you've got to be aware of that. Therefore, the world doesn't know as a living. You're going to see a tremendous change. Are you all ready for it? When you've had enough time to think about it, been arguing about abolishing the tea break, that my memory tells me for 7 or 8 years. It probably goes back, in fact, I think probably about 20 years. But I can recall it 7 or 8 years ago. And now that it's finally resolved, are you all capable of taking on the change?
What's this for? You lot sold it.
You girls have sold it.
Eh?
You girls have sold
I'm
it.
sure we didn't.
You weren't cost efficient.
If you're lot, it's not cost efficient. Don't come crying when you spend your money. Are you all ready for bacon? Everybody?
Yeah.
Anybody who's not come forward?
How did you vote?
We voted for.
You voted for? Ben? Yes.
Again.
Yes.
Golly, 2, 4, 6 to 2. 6-2. Which union? GMB. Well, that had the biggest majority for last time. It was 2 to 1. Why? Why against?
We didn't think the offer was good enough.
People have fought for it in the past. My dad fought for it to get it. And I don't think you should give up that concession. But seeing as how the company is, we knew it had to go. Obviously, we knew the tea break had to go. But, you know, I'd still voted against it. Yeah.
Very afternoon. These 2 only, there was 6 against and 2 for. It's all tea break. Just talking about it. There was 6.
I'd love a cup of tea. Lovely, yes. A cup of tea would be lovely, with some milk and no sugar. Thank you.
let me know when you've done it, yeah? Change the caustic patch. Let me know when you're finished.
Will do, Jack.
I'm going to put the overflow on for Dave, else the overflow tank on.
We can't feed uranium to the dissolver if the dissolver's pressurised.
Right.
We had a minor pressurisation.
Yeah.
It was caused because of liquor locking in the dissolver off-gas system. I've now cleared that, and the pressure in the dissolver has dropped to normal. Right. So once the control room men are happy with the situation, we'll carry on and feed again. So, you know, everything's back under control, but we weren't able to feed for 10 or 15 minutes because of that earlier.
The problem is that we've fed a lot of metal. We've fed 2.5 tons in the last 6 hours, so we'll have to give the dissolver time to settle down.
So that must be nearly a record.
Yes, I think it would be, yeah.
What do you normally feed in 24 hours?
6.5 tons.
Red cell roof, we need the filter paper changed on the beta in air. And we need the results for the B6 stack samples. Alpha, beta, and iodine Maypack.
Before being released into the outside air, the dissolver gases are filtered, then discharged through this chimney built originally as part of the bomb-producing facility. A sampler constantly monitors radioactive levels on the filter papers. A high level triggers off alarms in the control rooms. Between 1953 and 1955, holes in the filters at the top of these chimneys led to a large-scale release of radioactivity into the surrounding countryside. In terms of doses to the local people, it represented 2.5 times that received as a result of the Windscale 1957 fire. Fortunately, the filters had been repaired before that accident.
Right, first of all, vessel vent number 1 filter is going to be changed on a red cell roof. Most of it, or all of it, I think that's here today. We've all done it before. We'll put the cameraman in first, so he can get himself into position and watch everybody coming over the barrier and go through the procedure. Riggers will go in next, check your gear out, make sure you've got everything that you require. We get set up on that side, then we take the plug out. Plug comes out, goes to the south side towards the house well.
Yeah.
Right? Then we'll go, take the silo coffin lid off, that will come to the west side and drop on the floor.
Yeah.
Then we go back, by then the monitors can be monitoring the filter, ready to be removed, and when you're satisfied with the hot spots and that were okay, then you rig that up, lift it, bring that west, and put that into the silo coffin. Everybody happy? Right.
It's gone quiet there. Shine the torch, make the price say where it's look here. Microfibers background of the barrier.
Liquid waste is discharged down the pipeline into the Irish Sea, and that affects the marine environment. This slide shows the concentration of the radionuclide cesium-137 in locally caught fish. In the 1970s, it was an important contributor to people's radiation dose. As we've reduced the discharges, the levels have fallen off quite rapidly. This is alpha-emitting materials, plutonium mainly, which behave a bit differently. They concentrate in sediments. They're concentrated particularly by shellfish, and this shows the concentration in winkles over the years. And here one sees that levels have reduced. They've reduced more slowly in response to the discharges, but they are reducing. And we can look now at consequences to local people differently in this bar chart. So at the top, we've got our 2 millisieverts per year average sort of dose from natural radiation. And I've got a figure of 7 in as the average dose to people in Cornwall. 1987, our high-rate consumer of shellfish, just less than 1/3 of a millisievert. And that would, of course, be an addition to the dose they would be receiving from natural sources. So the dose has been increased, but not by a dramatic amount. And there is no way at all that those radiation doses can have produced a leukemia cluster, either in C-scale or anywhere else. And that scientifically is quite a powerful argument. Publicly, I think it tends not to be convincing because people say, well, the calculations might be wrong. The discharges are there and the leukemias are there, so the discharges must have caused it. Again, that's not very scientific.
In many places, when you say you live in this area, people are inclined to leave the room immediately in case you pass on the radioactivity. But I mean, we know that doesn't happen, you know, and all the rest of it, but we're talking about the rest of the country.
What other people think of us depends on many things, including perhaps what the media thinks of us. And maybe they've had a negative attitude that's developed from the way we've dealt with information in the past. Maybe that's a factor.
It was unfortunate that Yorkshire Television got the first blow in, didn't they?
Yes, that had a very, very big impact.
And they told the truth, but they didn't really tell the whole truth, did they?
That's right, they presented a particular...
Well, they didn't always tell the truth.
They didn't always tell the truth.
That raises the question of what are we hearing tonight, isn't it, really? I mean, we are suspicious, and we look at you, and if perhaps your collar reversed, we might, you know, think more about what you were saying tonight. And or another question perhaps you should ask is there anybody checking on the things that we're watching tonight and saying, or could sign a statement to say that this is in fact authentic?
The general scientific consensus at the moment basically is that the facts that I've presented are as good a representation as you can give of the relative hazard.
In looking at this tonight, I like your style and I like what you've said tonight. It's reassured me very much. And then I start to think, you know, whose side is he on? Perhaps I'm wrong.
Of course, British Nuclear Fuels pays my salary. Like nearly everybody else that works here, I do also live in Cumbria.
What you really saying
is,
so. Are we knowledgeable enough to argue with you, you see? That's really the point, isn't it? We're not. Most of us.
In 1988, the Kamari report concluded that leukemia clusters in the area could have been caused by Sellafield's activities. The report called for further investigation. In 1970, reprocessing came to a halt. Fuel was stockpiled in this pond. There was a serious build-up of radioactivity, and plant workers had to be rotated to keep their dose within the legal limits. There was a danger the management would run out of people. A solution was found. In 1976, a new technique for filtering the water was introduced. The water is now cleaned of beta and gamma byproducts by 6-step filtration plant. Another plant to take out the alpha products is under construction.
We did have bad times in the actual ponds in B30 with the fuel being left for longer than necessary, and it corroded more. As you know now, we're actually treating the fuel while it's in the ponds, containerising, so there's less corrosion as well of the fuel, so less activity coming through.
What happened to this discharge before 6-step came on?
A lot of it would just go out to sea. But since we've come on, all the activity actually goes into the main storage tanks, the 1,000-metre cube storage tanks where we store the ion exchange bed.
And eventually?
Eventually, it'll be solidified and drummed and kept as a solidified waste on site. Or where the National Repository for Active Waste is built.
Here?
Pardon?
Will it be here?
We don't know. We don't know. We'll be keeping it here for a few years while it cools, but where the long-term storage site will be, that's a decision for the government.
They'll have a copy of your statement.
Right. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today I am making a statement. It's part of the Minister's statements that we're making at the moment. This is the 8th about the environment, and it's a very important part of the environment is what we do with the waste fuel from power stations. But the important thing to say really is that we've got the technology. We must now implement that technology. And what we are doing on the site today, and what I've seen, is really what people have been saying to us for a very long time, and that is we must reprocess more of what we produce. Man does produce waste, and a lot of people have been saying we mustn't just put that to landfill, it must be reprocessed. Here is a classic example of where waste is being reprocessed for reuse, and the surplus material, the waste material from that, has then got to be stored effectively.
What's your reaction to yesterday's announcement that a new study is going to be carried out in the Seascale area generally in relation to childhood leukemia cases?
Well, of course, there is major public concern on this, but it very much depends on the type of leukemia, which is a wide variant of diseases there. But of course, more scientific research is needed.
But don't you think that that scientific research should be completed before there are any decisions about storing low or intermediate level waste here?
There is no evidence at all to support the theory that because one is close to a facility like this, there is necessarily a higher incidence of cancer or leukemia.
Sure, that's
what one has got at the moment is on the best scientific and medical evidence that it isn't necessarily related at all. But what one obviously needs is more research.
Could I perhaps just add something there? Because I think you may well be aware, currently on this site, there is an enormous amount of radioactive material already stored. So it's not a case of bringing a whole lot more here. We already have high-level waste stored in its present form. In volume terms, it's something like 30 or 40 years of reprocessing equals 12 double-decker buses.
Surely the study could reveal things about this area that are not unconnected with Sellafield, which may surprise us. And therefore, if this area had then become a net importer of low and intermediate waste from other parts of the country, it would be rather worrying.
Well, the point I was trying to make was that you would have the results of the study clearly before any, because of the time scale.
Going on holiday, are we?
No. It's a life insurance policy.
Aren't they normally called boredom?
Ah, but I can change freedom as my life changes. If I get married or...
Single, eh? Tell me more.
Here. See for yourself.
Going on holiday, are we?
No, it's a life insurance policy.
Dial 100 and ask for free phone freedom life insurance from Guardian Royal Exchange.
Crying over you, crying over you. From this moment on, I'll be crying, crying.
It's no good turning on the waterworks after November 15th. Register by then, or you'll miss out on the extras you could get if you become an H2 owner. To register for incentives and a prospectus and the water share offers, call 0272 272 272, no later than November 15th.
They found the formula on a buried parchment 2,000 years old.
Only 2 people know the secret, and they've sworn a deadly pact never to tell anybody else.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's because they're made from secret ingredients, smuggled in from thousands of miles away.
I had 100 packets in a day once. What's unbelievable about that tank?
Why do Walker's crisps always taste so good?
What's it all about? It's about making a statement. About being you, whoever you are. The Brawn Independent makes it easy. Without a cord, it heats up fast to give your hair a style that's yours alone. The Brawn Independent 2000. It's you, whoever you are.
All these Hot Point appliances are available on 12 months interest-free credit. But from who? Have you rumbled it? Hot Point have.
I used to only get pushed out on Sundays, then pushed straight back again. But that was before Oxo Gravy Boat came along. Ready-made gravy, made from real meat stock. Here we go again. Oh, lovely. And again, marvellously meaty. No rest for the wicked. It's all go.
Did you see that? A talking gravy boat.
Gravy Boat from Oxo. Push it out every day.
That's it. Where I was born and raised. Well, you didn't go hungry then, did you? Now I'm going to show you where I did my courting. Who says romance is dead? This is where I had my first taste of the finer side of life. McEwan's Exports. Has this place changed much? Aye. These days they're letting anybody in.
McEwan's Export. It's class in a glass.
features of this which are important. One, that it's actually cost-effective to do it that way, but secondly, it takes out a large amount of the human error figure.
And you know where the waste is from one power station all the time.
Absolutely.
We talk about it as spent fuel. It's fuel that's come in from the power stations, both in this country and overseas, and as a result of reprocessing, we create some waste.
Right. Yep, we have it, and that's fine. Have it. Yeah. Cheers. Bye-bye. Hello, David.
All right.
Good to see you. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Right. Lawrence is round the corner, yeah?
Okay.
So we're looking at the inlet pump handler control station. Okay.
Well, they've tightened up security because of the IRA thing.
What arrangements, security arrangements, have you got that people cannot interfere with the basic database? And what sort of checking are you doing to make sure that the database is in fact accurate? Because I mean, it's no good the machine printing out what you should maintain this next month if that's been interfered with.
Agreed. Sure.
So could you tell us something about that?
Well, the systems are all password protected, and each access group has their own passwords and so forth, so it's protected from that point of view. Also, we can restrict with the environment itself access levels. Things like safety mechanisms, I should not be able to change the spec on those at all without...
So there are levels of approval?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
All the bolts laid out, all the bits laid out, wheel it round, the flask identity's put on a little card in there, it's all buttoned down. It's professional, it's right. We've done this sort of thing. We're all very happy.
We just want to be sure that you have adequate facilities to cope with any contingency that might arise.
Well, the ultimate contingency is that we do not discharge materials that are not within the certificate of liquid effluent authorization for this plant.
You've agreed that all operating instructions will be approved prior to the introduction of nuclear fuel into the plant. Okay? Right, and in addition to that, can we just be clear on our agreed position is that the active commissioning will involve 65 flasks as described in your letter, Phil, of the 29th of July.
Fine, yes.
And that fuel receipt would be stopped if the effluent discharge duct for some reason or other is delayed.
Yes.
And that no more than 6 flasks will be handled.
Those represent cleared agreements in the context of our arrangements for reaching cleared agreements. Yes, I agree.
The myth is that you're all running around in masks and white coats and decontaminated before you go in and before you come out. But I think the most fascinating thing of the visit has been actually getting rid of some of the myths that one had been led to believe. And it's like anything, which unless you know the subject, you tend to believe what is read in the press. Although I did see in the Times the other day that in 1983, was it, 27% of the people believed what they read in the press, and this year it's only 7%.
Is that right? I haven't seen that.
We've been struggling to get at the number, the percentage of people who believe us when we put messages out. We've been struggling to get that up, and we've been disappointed. I've been disappointed every year to find that it's only a relatively small number, but people believe that we're honest.
Honest.
Yes.
John Ho.
I think it's underway. It's out the handrail, didn't we, when we put it? Inside? Yeah. Mars! You know the handrail? Inside, where'd that go? Yes, I got through it.
As far as I'm aware, they're a glass fibre filter, and maintenance is required. And obviously, we're not wanting to start to maintain an item of plant as big as this. So our policy is to decommission it.
The power we just visited this morning, hopefully, apart from the obvious problems of working at altitude, shouldn't present us with a great deal of radiological problems. However, the one behind us on B6 The radiological conditions are such that a lot of the work will have to be done remotely.
That's the one that had the fire?
Yes, that's the one that had the fire in 1957.
Building 204 was the original reprocessing building, constructed in the 50s to separate plutonium from Britain's atomic bombs. It was later modified to enable second-generation reactor fuel to be reprocessed. A violent blowback contaminated the workers and the building itself. Faced with a massively expensive upgrading program recommended by the NII, it was shut down and is now marked down for demolition. The main contaminant, cesium-137, takes 300 years to decay, leaving behind long-lived alpha emitters. The entire building is now classed, at the very least, as low-level nuclear waste.
We're looking into a facility where we're decommissioning a plutonium-uranium mixed oxide facility. It produced plutonium and uranium mixed oxide when it was running. What we are doing now is taking it to pieces, bit by bit. What we're having to do is to start and dismantle each glove box in turn. They have part of a cabinet slung from the ceiling, and they're taking sheets of lead from the surface of it. And then once they've got that off, they will then size reduce each side of that feed chute into small enough pieces to take out of the facility and to pack it into a big crate that we have in a storage area downstairs.
Is it very highly contaminated?
The area that you're in is very highly contaminated. The plutonium-uranium dioxide spreads thinly throughout the surfaces of the walls inside and certainly on the floor. It is an area where it would be impossible to work other than in pressurized suits. What's the count? 50 grams of plutonium on those two pieces of material we've taken out of the RMC.
What? Is that low?
It will be about the level we would expect on pieces of metal like that from this area.
Where's the master, Jeff? There you go. Where's the master? There'll be two over there.
Hello again.
So you check him out here, Doc.
you.
Just check.
This is where we used to feed all the main CGB receipts through for decanning. It's now been taken over in terms of feed by Pond 5, our fuel handling plant. B30 is now in a state of wind down to really towards decommissioning. So we're in the business of feeding corroded fuel from the pond, again for feed to B205. All these items are required to be worn in most buildings in SEP area. In B30, we have some problems with higher radiation levels, and there's also an air activity problem in the building. So PASs are worn to provide an assessment of personal air sampler to ensure internal uptake is measured and assessed. The information off the film badge and the PAS is assessed and provided to supervisors so that dose control is maintained within the people they're responsible for. So those three individuals are being closely monitored, and the work that they do day to day is being controlled so that their uptake does not continue to carry on up to the trigger levels. How long will it take to clear the pond from? Between 8 to 10 years is our current estimate, best estimate, for removing the fuel inventory from the pond. And in my estimate, as a personal opinion, at least the same again, 8 to 10 years to clear the pond of the other items. Plans for those have yet to be developed and the equipment provided. The decommissioning as such would not be complete in terms of full removal of radioactive sources until the structure itself was demolished and removed.
Now, what's happened to me is that the film badge that I wore for the month of June, when it was developed, it was found to be black. There was a recorded dose of 39 millisieverts on my film badge. And the consequence of that to me is that my film badge has been withdrawn.
The reason for the inquiry is to look at an unusual film badge result, higher than normal. 39.2 millisieverts, whole body dose. And it was on the film badge of Mr. D. Sycamore, or appears to be on that film badge. That's what we've really got to investigate.
The average for the whole of the East Ponds group is 1 millisievert per year. So this is very unusual. How often
have you had an unusual film badge?
Of this magnitude? Never.
In your opinion, what areas in Pond 5 could you have got it?
It's the sort of thing that you might expect to find from a plutonium plant. Possibly. Without crossing subterranean barriers in East Ponds, the potential for an explosion of this magnitude is negligible.
Hello, Dave. Sit you down, Dave. We've been asked to investigate this unusual film badge result. Dave, what was your immediate reaction?
Disbelief. Something unusual has happened to my film. I'm convinced that I haven't received this dose. Yeah. I've given a lot of thought as to how this could have happened. And basically there are only 3 ways, I think, in which it could have occurred. One way, the way that we've all been discussing, is that as part of my normal working duties, I've come into contact with an abnormal radiation source, and I don't think that's happened. The second is that my film badge was already carrying that dose, either when it was issued to me, or that in some way it picked it up after I handed it in at the end of the month. And the third possibility is that somebody has deliberately marked my film. That is a possibility.
How do you mean by that third possibility, Dave? I think someone maybe put in a place where it could get this radiation.
Yeah.
So obviously we have to ask you, I think, whether you feel there is any motive, any reason that somebody might have to wish to do that to your film. Is there anything you think of? Any odd occurrences that you feel people might feel aggrieved at?
No, I mean, if it's happened in this way, then you have to assume that there's somebody out there who dislikes me enough to do this to my film with the objective of getting me out of the way, getting me out of the area for a while, maybe even for a long while.
Did you go to any other plants on the site?
I worked nowhere else but here. I did not visit any other plant.
Do you just want to wait here? Yeah. And I'll get the key from the foreman. I'll pick the radiation levels on them. Well, there's nothing there, but that's what we use for putting the broken bits of uranium in. The badge would need to be in here for hundreds of hours. The other side of that wall, there's a set of effluent pipes. And we suspect that there's a piece of activity being flushed down a pipe and is lodged in the pipe. Now, the film badge would need to be above the lead brick and taped to the wall. And Bob was talking about 10 hours to get 3 millisieverts.
So we're talking about
100 hours to get 39 millisieverts.
Beyond reasonable belief, I think.
It's also on the charcoal log monitors, isn't it?
I think for the purposes of what we want, the energies and so on, the dose rates, the sort of pattern on the film, if it's just inside, you know, no more than, well, I think the natural, perhaps 6 inches at the most, probably more like 3 inches if you can make it, inside the face of the glove box, so that we're not getting any shielding effect.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. That's just the experimental film. And this is the film issued to Mr. Sycamore. And you'll see that the two are visually very similar.
I mean, the stationary with respect to the source, it's a very important feature in this, really, isn't it? Because if it's been moving with respect to a source, it suggests somebody's been wearing it, realistically, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's got quite a large density on it, so it's very difficult to sort of step back from that and say that was stationary relative to the source, because you can see that the image isn't that sharp.
Well, there's two reasons why the blurring might occur, isn't there? One, movement of the film relative to the radiation field.
Right.
And two, where there are several sources, numerous sources.
If you look long enough and hard enough, you'll find a way of reproducing the film.
Well, we have done.
But that doesn't mean to say that that's how the film is exposed.
Maybe totally unrelated with it.
It seems almost impossible for it to have happened in this plant from all the evidence we have. It seems impossible for it to have happened with Mr. Sycamore knowing it. It must have happened off of this plant. The film badge must have gone off the plant.
But it's being exposed off plant, outside the FHP.
That's right. There's one little point.
Well, not being worn by Mr. Sycamore.
Not being worn by Mr. Sycamore.
That's right.
He's not received the dose.
That's right.
got your badge back, Dave?
Yes, I did. The Board of Inquiry have concluded that the dose on my film badge wasn't attributable to me, and therefore they've allowed me back in the area, and they've given me back my film badge.
I see you don't keep it in your locker.
Yes, I don't keep it in my locker anymore.
Let's go.
Every 3 months, the company provides a formal brief to all employees. It's part of the company's new communications drive to make sure that we all know what's happening in the company.
Attitudes and practices, technology, ideas and methods are all undergoing change within BNFL. They are necessary for the company to succeed in the turbulent waters of energy and economics which lie ahead in the 1990s and beyond the year 2000.
The concept of the corporate plan is very simple. It's simply to identify how the company has to change in order to survive and prosper in the future.
That's just the title page. The turnover this year, the 839 million, that's actually up 6% on what we had last year. Our operating profit, that is up 8%.
Why did we put the prices up and turn around and achieve a higher operating profit?
I don't know is the answer to that. I'll have to ask the company accountants that question. Although they are actual increases, they don't reflect increases in production. They reflect increases in prices. We've only made a profit because of the outmoded and totally unpopular style of business that we've conducted with the CGB, cost plus. I mean, what would you do about the way the company's organised? What would you do about the way we organise our labour to overcome that? Would you adopt flexible working?
Well, I voted for flexible working, yeah. It's got to come in. Yeah. But what if the blokes don't want it? All 4 chiefs voted against it.
Well, it's a matter we'll get manoeuvred into accepting it, whatever we do.
Well, what would you rather have, a job or no job? It's basically that.
People will mean in the long term there'll be less jobs because you'll be requiring less people. That's the whole point in reducing the manning levels in our building, isn't it?
The whole point in reducing manning levels is to reduce costs. We are very lucky in that we don't have to go to the redundancy situation because we've got a lot of new plant coming on this site.
We're very fortunate that there won't be redundancies. Where will the jobs come from for the young ones that's just going to start? From school. Well, no jobs going to come for them.
It's not BNFL's responsibility to employ West Cumbria. No, it isn't. But the whole idea is to deman, to operate the plant with fewer people. That is the objective. Make no bones about that. Bolting and unbolting of flasks, always done by fitters at the moment. If you try to do it, the fitters would down tools and walk out, wouldn't they? Mm-hmm. Right? But that's the sort of work which, if you were trained to do it, you could do it just as well as a fitter. You don't have to serve a 5-year apprenticeship to know how to undo a bolt or do it up. Your jobs will get more interesting. You will take on more varied tasks as a result of this. You'll get more money as a result of it. It must happen.
The industry talks about changing people's mind as far as for nuclear energy and that. I mean,
yes.
A lot of people outside the plant now are talking about Cumbria being the dustbin of the world, and a lot of people now are getting fed up with Cumbria always taking on the waste. I mean, does BNFL think that they've got the workers up in a battle that if they won't have it anywhere else, we'll have it in Cumbria because they won't see anything?
Well, that's right.
I think that because there is an established nuclear capacity in West Cumbria, where it is largely accepted by the people that live here. Not fully accepted, of course. There are lots of people who live in these areas who don't like nuclear power. But yes, it will be easier to introduce long-term storage
of solidified waste, intermediate level waste and high level waste in this area than anywhere else. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right.
Why should we have to have this store out here? I've lived here most of my life.
Because of
population. And on one side there's Drigg, where I live, on this side is here.
But what we've got to say is that waste is our business.
Well, as a rundown area like this is, if you've got large single employers, you'll always get that though, won't you?
What's important is that we should strive to make our industry safer. Anybody who's worked here for any period of time will remember the beach incident and the terrible climate that we lived through after that.
Don't you think it was a good thing for BNFL, when you look back on it?
In what sense?
Well, they've kicked their asses and they've changed their ideas, haven't they? They had to. All of a sudden they were found out they were pumping all this out to sea and all this.
If it wasn't a low tide, the tide wasn't low, if it had been a rough sea, nothing would have come back. But it did.
And Greenpeace came up there, like.
You know, so something good did come out of it.
It was certainly a milestone in this company's life, and I think that there have been changes made in this company.
There wouldn't have been those
which
changes,
wouldn't
though,
have
would
been
there?
made if that hadn't happened. Yes, I think so.
It's a pity something like that's got to happen to make changes, though, isn't it?
Morning, Harry.
Oh, well.
I've got that momentous news for you.
Oh, terrific.
We've got a no-no to...
Marvellous.
So
Super, that.
we're now in business.
Good.
And,
That's excellent. Well, we'll make the moves now to bring the flask in.
Tremendous, that. Yes. It's a real achievement, I think. It's nice for Harry, you know, as in his final retirement here to see the...
See all this going in now.
First.
Thorpe Reprocessing plant is being built to handle enriched fuel 3 times as radioactive as fuel currently being reprocessed. The plant will cost £1.8 billion. BNFL expect it to earn £4.5 billion in its first 10 years. Overseas contracts have been signed with Japan, West Germany, Switzerland, Italy, the Netherlands, Sweden, Spain and Canada. Thorpe's one of only 2 reprocessing units of this type in the world, the others in France. Despite mounting opposition, the Japanese are building their own. West Germany, however, recently abandoned theirs after spending £1 billion.
The directors of that programme, Malcolm Hurst and Charles Stewart, consider the lives of nuclear power station workers in the current edition of The Listener magazine. Next week, the story continues of Kerry, Diana and Josie, the 3 Australian girls whose true stories have been filmed over a period of 12 years. Bingo, Bridesmaids and Braces rediscovers them at the age of 26 next Thursday evening at 10 o'clock.
Eureka, we've done it. What is it?
A brand new series of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
You're right. What do we do?
Quick, improvise something.
In 1977, Soviet engineers celebrated the successful construction of a nuclear power station at the small Ukrainian town of Chernobyl.
Качество выполненных работ. Подавайте напряжение.
On the 26th of April 1986, one of the reactors exploded and changed forever the world's view of nuclear power. Chernobyl Unit 4 was completely destroyed. The graphite core caught fire, glowing red hot. For 10 days, the plume of hot gases carried away the radioactive elements. 9 tons of fuel escaped in the fallout cloud. October 1989, and this is the village of Kupachi in the Ukraine. Although it's more than 3 years since the accident, the consequences of Chernobyl are still being felt today. Even today, entire villages are still being demolished. 135,000 people were evacuated from the zone around Chernobyl. Radiation means their homes are now fit for just one thing. It's a small, sad example of the continuing cost of Chernobyl. When the Soviet army finished, this was all that remained of Kopachi. In this special edition of Tomorrow's World, we've come to the Ukraine to find out for ourselves the consequences of Chernobyl, the world's worst civil nuclear accident. We also have exclusive access to the Soviet maps, which for the first time reveal what they believe to be the true spread of the radiation. This year, 100 villages are due to be evacuated. We'll be going to Chernobyl itself to find out what went wrong and what they're doing now to make sure it never happens again. Estimates for fatal cancers resulting from the accident have been trebled in the last year. So we'll be looking at the monitoring of the population who live in the affected villages, because Chernobyl will be able to tell us a great deal about the dangers involved in living with radiation. 31 people died in the explosion and from radiation burns received fighting the fire. Once helicopters had smothered the burning reactor, one of the most dangerous demolition jobs in human history began. One ton of radioactive fuel fell on the site itself. The job of these men was to retrieve intensely radioactive lumps of fuel and reactor graphite. Radiation of this strength kills in under an hour. In theory, each man was limited to 60 seconds of this work per year. The danger of such close exposure to the heart of a nuclear reactor will only be revealed by time. Approaching Chernobyl today, you first reach a military checkpoint. This is the 30-kilometer exclusion zone around the power station. Only people working at Chernobyl are legally permitted inside the zone. Everything coming out is checked for contamination. Checking us on this trip is Glasgow University health physicist Dr. Bill East. Instead of forest, the power station is today surrounded by scrub and decontamination sand. A desperate need for electricity was the reason the plant was not abandoned. It took 2 years to recommission units 1, 2 and 3. The first question was how such an accident could ever have happened. This is the control room of Chernobyl Unit 1. On April the 25th, 1986, the reactor operators in Unit 4 began an unusual safety experiment to test the behavior of the turbines under conditions of low reactor power. During the long wait to begin that experiment, nobody noticed that the reactor started to produce excessive amounts of xenon gas. Now, xenon gas has the effect of turning the reactor sluggish. So, in an attempt to produce even a small amount of power, they decided to withdraw an increasingly large number of the control rods. At the moment, this reactor has 50 control rods inserted. The minimum safe number of control rods for an RBMK reactor was 43. At the height of the experiment, that was reduced to between 8 and 6. Coolant water started to turn to steam. Steam absorbs less neutrons than water, and the power started to rise. That in turn produced even more steam. Still less neutrons absorbed, and the power surged ever higher. Emergency cooling water should automatically have been pumped in well before they reached this stage, but the operators had disabled the safety system. At 01:23:40, the shift manager attempted an emergency shutdown. 3 seconds later, the reactor went super prompt critical. It reached 100 times its safe maximum power output in just 4 seconds. The first explosion blew the 2,000-ton reactor cover off. The second was probably caused by the ignition of hydrogen. At their trials,